So let's talk about randomizers. We have been working with them in the past already. You remember that we added them to some values to give each note that we play a little slightly different starting position of something, like fine tune or cut off or resonance, just to add a little bit more life to our patches. But randomizers can do way more, and this is what I want to show you here. And we have actually 3 modes, which is special for pigments. Sometimes you just have randomizers at all. They do always the same, and you can just apply them to something and set the amount. But here we have 3 types. So we have binary, and as you see, I've already routed this randomizer for us to the cutoff knob. So I've picked a value around 0.20, actually here 20, if I can hit the number. And what you see is it's jumping between the lowest and the highest value, nothing in between. So the binary mode just jumps between your maximum range and the default position. And everything you can do here is to change the sync speed. You can change the probability that a higher or lower value is being hit. So this is 100% high value, 100% low, and everything between will just shift this relationship so that you get more of one of the other. But what you can't do here is you cannot get a rhythm or something. This is always randomized. So no matter what you do, it's always randomized and only between the lowest and the highest value. So Turing is something different. If you bring this flip mode down to 0, it will always create the same sequence. And by length, you can determine how long the sequence should go. So if it should be 8 notes long, you do this setting. And if I hold down a note now, you will always get the same sequence. Let me actually bring this into the other side, maybe we can hear it better. So as you notice, we have the same rhythm all the time. It was once created randomly, but then it repeats, and we stay in this rhythm. So if you want to create a random rhythm, this is the way to go. Here you can decide how many steps this rhythm should have. So 20 steps means 20 different values until it starts again from the beginning, and something like, let's say 4 means only 4 different steps. So it's up to you how you set this up. And then with the flip button, as it says on the bottom, so it sets the probability for the sequence to evolve. At 50% it's fully random. At 100 it flips each time the loop repeats. By flipping, let's actually see if we bring this to 2. Looks like a plain repetition for me. I don't know what they mean by this. But at 50% at here is randomly generated. So here you won't have a coherent rhythm like before. And if you go something between, you can make the changes more subtle that happen to the rhythm. So if you say, hey, I want to have an 8-bar rhythm that is mainly the same but a little bit different each time, you can go for a value like this and then have your little differences. This is weird that it did stop now for so long. I guess this was just an accident by the algorithm. It just created so many steps that were all the same. So yeah, you see, you can't really count on that. Sometimes it will give you some trashy rhythms or evolve into a direction that you don't like. But if you want your sequence to evolve all the time, you can. If you want to be happy random, then you can just do something like this and see your sequence evolving all the time over and over. So it repeats each time itself with little alterations, and the longer you play it, the more it will be changed from the beginning, of course, because each new cycle is a new evolution in your values. So this is the Turing mode, and by the way, this is always as you know it, right? So if I hit legato, our nodes will have the current value that you see. If I play poly, each node will start the sequence that is currently running from the beginning. And mono, I guess, would then restart each sequence, from the beginning. You already hear this cut-off character that mono often has when it replaces something. So these are the settings as you know them. And then we have the sample and hold section. So if you hold down a node here, you will all the time get randomly generated values. Completely. So there's no shape that you can recognize in a rhythm like before. And then with these buttons you can just determine how the values should be generated to each other. So it says here, when the new value is higher than the previous, that's the time it takes to fade to the new one. So instead of getting this rapid strong changes like a square shape, we will get more curves. And you can do this into the opposite direction. So this of course changes the way everything sounds, because this shape here, if it goes from down here to up here, it means it's an instant jump in value, while this here now is a transition. So what we could do, let me make this poly first, or even free running. Is free running an option? No, okay, then we stick with poly. Poly means that each node that I hit will get a different value. This is basically what we did earlier. Then let's stay with mono maybe. Legato. I'm just wondering that it stops. Yeah, it did stop to create values for us now, right? Because it just stays there. I don't know why it does this now. Let me reset this. I don't know. Let's see if this is going back to what it does. Because this is sample and hold as well, and as you can see, it generates for us all the time. And this one just stopped. I don't know why. Let's just for now take randomizer 2 then. I don't know why this stopped. Maybe this is a bug. So let's bring this to pitch so you can hear what I really mean with the curves. So this is a rapid change. Right, we get instantly all the other values. But if you, okay, it was set to clock. because I changed. If I bring it back to clock, it will, okay, probably start again with this. So clock means then that it's generated by this rate button in the time that you set up. And if you take any of these keyboard settings, it will only be triggered when you hit a key and then behave the way you would expect from it. So as you know, poly, sequence for each note, legato, all join the current note that you hold, and mono resets the cycle for every other note being played if you play a new note. Okay, alright, so good that we have this sorted out as well. But yeah, remember how this sounds? With the rapid changes. And if you make something like this, we will have more of a pitch shift effect. A little bit like our glide function that I showed you earlier in the video with the poly modes. Because now we have this transition instead of this rapid changes. So this is again the same principle like with the LFO. You remember when I applied this, we had this constant jump, this bump here in the middle, instead of working with this, which is more smooth, right? Here we have a transition because from here to here it takes some time. This dot here needs to travel, and if this is pitch, it goes now down and then goes up. And in this case, it's just bumping down. So this is, remember this, ignore this little dot because it's randomized. Let me bring this back to square. So you can see it now, it comes and it falls and we have rapid change. And this here is the same behavior. On pitch, you can hear it really well. Versus this. So this is what the settings for, and with this little button you can hard sync them to each other so they have the same value all the time if you don't want to have differences between them. And here you can pick the source for the generation of the random values. So it's now linked to white noise, which we'll be covering later. And it's the source no matter if it's activated or not. But we could link it to something else. But actually, I must be honest, I think it's pretty like, oh yeah, okay, now you can see it. So I linked it to the LFO1. You can see it moving here up and down, and this is the values that it generates now. Right, it goes up and down like this. So this is a little bit, yeah, like white noise is probably a bit more coherent. This is why we don't have this movement. But we'll be talking about white noise later. So yeah, so this is how you know, now you know about these 3 different types, so you can make decisions based on your plan, on your goal with your sound, which one to pick. And for this mode that is now running through with random values, there are really no rules. You can really put it on everything you want. As you just heard on this course button with the pitch, this is something that you can only use in an intro, or if you want to play only with this one patch. Of course, in a musical composition you can use this because it will mess with your scale again, with your music theory. It will sound out of key. But like I showed you, you could link this to the cutoff to get random values. You could let's put a module here in the middle and add the randomizer, so you could give this some random values all the time. Which sounds terrible. Maybe not a good example. Maybe we will rather, yeah, look at the tempo, the delay. This will sound funny, but it's way too strong. Or maybe this is cooler if we would use the Turing and bring it to a fixed sequence of 8 bars. So we'll get the same amounts always. Maybe bring it back from this button. Just so you get an idea, it really didn't sound super well. It's not like, this is not the best presentation ever, but just to show you some ways. Like fine-tuning something like this to make it sound good can really take long, sometimes an hour or even longer, to figure out where to route things to and make cool stuff with them. But just so you have an idea, so we could even maybe bring this to the to this one here. To get something like a sequence started and combine this with other elements. So with stuff like this, you could be creating then sequences and figure out what you want to do with the randomizers. But most of the time I use them as I showed you. So I think it was on sample and hold, and then we change this to poly, and that means we get a new value every time we hit a note. Which is, of course, on this patch not really audible because it's a pad and we would need to hold it longer to hear it. But then in a huge evolving scale you won't hear the difference. But just to show you the concept again, let's take this one. So here's a randomizer. On the cutoff filter, as you see, it gives all the time little different values. So I put it here on Turing. Which messes a little bit with the filter, which you won't hear because this is a plug patch, so you rather play it like this. And then it's not a problem that this is all the time moving. But let me change this to sample and hold, and then we bring it to poly. And so the way we did it before. And then we could take this randomizer and say a little bit of fine-tune changes, just subtle, a little bit of resonance. Go to the FX. Here's nothing we should modulate right now. Actually, there's not much on this patch that we can modulate, but just so you remember the concept. So we have now the cutoff, the resonance, and the fine-tune being randomly generated at each key, and just a little bit. And then always make sure that it's not working against you. So let's say I would do this into the negative position. As you remember, it goes into both directions, as you can see. So if I bring it into the negative position and then play, so as you see all the time now I got high values, but sometimes I get these low values. So this would take a lot of control away from my patch. If I would be playing now, it will come into my way because sometimes I have really bright and really dark notes. Sounds weird, right? Because some notes are really inaudible and some are super loud, and so you want to be careful with stuff like this. If you apply a randomizer like this, I really only use super little values like this to just add more organic to the sound. So yeah, this is so much everything about randomizers that you need to know so far, and I will see you in the next lesson.